Ukraine has liquidated another senior Russian official. In fact, it's one of the most senior Russian officials of the entire war and one of the most preposterous sources of Kremlin nonsense. And we're going to break down just what he's been saying and why this guy probably had it coming. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is part of a Ukrainian campaign targeting high-level individuals, particularly responsible for some of Russia's most deadly weapon systems. This is a bomb that supposedly killed a man named, let's see if we can get you this guy's, Igor Krylov, and Krylov was the head of Russia's nuclear, radiological, chemical, and biological defense forces. But this includes, of course, not just the military forces responsible for responding to what we in the West call NBC threats or CBRN threats, but he also is responsible for offensive weapons, including, quote, flame-based weapons, which in Russian parlance seems to include thermobaric rockets and bombs. So some of the most dangerous Russian weapons he was responsible for. Now, what's also interesting is that how he was targeted by Ukrainian special services. They actually targeted him with a bomb, about 300 grams of explosives concealed in his electric scooter. Yo, dudes, don't park your scooter outside. I don't know what else to tell you. Right? And again, this took place around 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And again, he was emerging with his assistant and was hit when he tried to turn on his scooter to buzz to work. He instead got hit with again, more or less a third of a kilogram, maybe a pound of explosives. But that's all it takes when you're literally sitting on them. Anyway, guys, before we talk about exactly what sort of preposterous claims this guy made, I want to mention real quick that if you want to support the channel, you can do so over on combatvetnews.com. This is, we just actually dropped a video looking at the North Korean tactics in Ukraine, in Kursk, where it looks like the North Koreans still have a lot to learn. We're going to talk about why they failed and why the Ukrainians are teaching them a lesson the hard way. But if you want to support the channel, keep me independent, that link is in the description. Okay. So, according to the Ukrainian SBU, they said, quote, Krylov was a war criminal and absolutely a legitimate target since he gave orders to use prohibited chemical weapons against the Ukrainian military, according to a source inside the FBU. And then they added, such an inglorious end awaits everyone who kills Ukrainians. Retribution for war crimes is inevitable. Now, again, this says the bomb was triggered remotely, was not rigged actually to his scooter, which I guess would make sense. I guess maybe they didn't want it to go off if like some thieves tried to yoink it. But again, 300 grams of TNT, very conventional. But what I thought was more interesting, again, Ukraine's SBU cited about 5,000 occasions where Russia used chemical weapons on the battlefield since 2020. In fact, in May, the U.S. State Department sanctioned Krylov's units, saying U.S. troops had recorded the use of chloropicrin, poison gas first developed in World War II against Ukrainian troops. And this is really interesting because generally the State Department has an incentive to not even I hadn't tracked this, has incentive to not disclose this, right? They really are trying to de-escalate this conflict. So the fact that this was pretty buried and the fact they at least publicly acknowledged it and then sanctioned his unit specifically, again, this was used as a poison gas in the First World War. It's also injected into soil prior to planting a crop to fumigate it, killing off parasites. It's broad-spectrum antifungal, antimicrobe, and anti-insect. So this is some dangerous stuff, likely something widely available and commercially available for the average Russian, right, where there's a fairly large agricultural industry. And in fact, fertilizers and pesticides are something that Russia really manufactures. It's a competitive advantage. But not only is this guy responsible for committing some war crimes, of which he finally is facing some consequences. God forbid the West actually acknowledge that war crimes are bad. But he also was a notorious mouthpiece for the Kremlin. In fact, he was one of the original people who claimed that the U.S. had been secretly building biolabs in Ukraine, something repeated by now Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Again, does it feel great to have our Director of National Intelligence get caught and bamboozled by a pretty easily verifiable lie? It does not. He then produced fake documents in March 2022, which said that Ukraine was totally about to, unleash terrible biolabs, bioweapons. I don't know. It sounds like the plot to a Resident Evil. You got to at least be a little creative when you come up with these things, guys. What's also interesting is, of course, Krylov also said that Ukraine was imminently developing a dirty bomb. 2 years ago, he said that 2 organizations in Ukraine have specific instructions to create a dirty bomb, and the work is in its final stages. And that was, of course, 2 years ago. So, again, the final stage has taken a lot longer, I guess, than anyone expected. Certainly, unfortunately, poor Krylov won't be here to see whatever fictional super weapon the Ukrainians are developing, because again, he appears to have cycled into the find out phase of fuck around and find out. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to James Gerling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Nutt, Sebastian Himmeling, Brian Kelly, Del McCombs, James Ola, Henry Roos here, and all our lieutenant tier folks. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.